Okay, welcome. You're in the Battleground. We got another packed show today. We got a lot to do. We're going to be in Missouri. We're going to be in Georgia, all over. I want to start with Boris Epshteyn. It was announced today, Boris, that President Donald J. Trump has dropped a huge lawsuit on Hillary Clinton and her clique regarding Russian disinformation, the Russian collusion, all of it. Can you give us, and I want to bring in Peter Navarro in a second to comment on that. Walk us through the nuts and bolts of this. Is this a real suit? Is this serious? Is this just a photo op and a press release? Or is this something that President Trump is serious about?
Absolutely not a photo op and absolutely not just a press release. This is a powerhouse lawsuit, and the list of defendants explains why Reuters, Politico, and all the majors are writing this up. It is a RICO lawsuit against the following: Hillary Clinton, the DNC, Perkins Coie, Michael Sussman, Mark Elias, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and the list goes on and on and on from there. James Comey, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Andrew McCabe. This is a powerhouse lawsuit. It includes specific damages of over $24 million. And the reason that President Trump is suing is because the government didn't do what it was supposed to do. Bill Barr was supposed to get to the bottom of this. To this spying on President Trump's campaign that you and I are so proud to have been a part of, and spying on President Trump's White House that all of us, me, you, Peter Navarro, of course, are so proud to have been a part of. So this lawsuit, Steve, makes up for the inability of Bill Barr, Sessions before him, obviously totally feckless, to do the right thing and investigate and get to the bottom of what exactly was perpetrated by Hillary Clinton, the DNC, Perkins Coie, Mark Elias, Sussman, and others. This is a very real, very strong lawsuit, and I will tell you, I bet you have a good amount of these defendants try to settle, try to get out of it when they feel the overwhelming seriousness of it and the damages that go along with it, which are very, very substantial.
I want to bring in Dr. Peter Navarro. It's $24 million that President Trump is suing for in a RICO charge.
No, Steve, actually, hold on.
Should do it. Let's get.
I want to be right about this because $24 million is just a piece of it. $24 million is a specific number. Beyond that, it's more compensatory damages, punitive damages. This is going to be, in effect, when you combine all of the damages, all the defendants, well north of $100 million. This is a big ticket lawsuit. And hey, the crux of the claim is something that President Trump has the defendants dead to rights on. We know they spied on his campaign. We know they spied on his White House. And now it's time to pay the piper.
I want to make sure Captain Bannon and my production team here, it's a 108-page complaint. It should be read. First off, it reads like a spy novel, so it's a page turner. You should read. It's almost unbelievable when we look at it. And look, Boris, you know this. They got all the villains named. Comey, Mark Elias, right? They got Mark Elias, right? Hey, Mark Elias, lawyer up. You got Hillary Clinton, the queen bee of the operation, and a RICO charge. But I want to bring in Peter Navarro. He's here for another reason, but I want to bring him in earlier in the show today because he was the president's chief economic advisor about manufacturing, trade, America First, economic nationalism, bringing manufacturing jobs back. Peter, go back in time, not just the campaign, but for the first year in the White House, the pressure that this investigation and this nonsense that they came up with, how many things we couldn't do because this was part of the nullification project, sir.
Yeah. Steve, it starts with what you call the original sin of the administration, which was after the president won in November of 2016, he brought in the Republican National Committee people. He brought in a large number of Bush Republicans on the grounds of making peace with the party and having kind of the career bureaucrats available to run administration. It was a terrible, terrible error, and it wound up giving us a whole range of people inside the White House perimeter that were just dramatically opposed to the president himself, and particularly the populist economic nationalist agenda that you and I, Steve, and Stephen Miller inside the White House at the beginning were pushing. When Bill Barr got announced as Attorney General, I wanted to weep. I thought to myself, here we have yet another Bushy, and not just a George W. Bushy, but kind of the creme de la creme of the rhino Bushies. And I knew it would come back to bite us in the butt. And what we have now, Steve, is factual evidence that Bill Barr both lied to the president and the American public about many things. One of the things that you and I have talked about, and I talked about in my In Trump Time book, is how there's a wonderful vignette in there about how I called Bill Barr after the election in 2020 and said, "Hey, Bill, you've got to investigate this fraud. I've done this big report on it. It's a slam dunk case for fraud." What Barr said to me quite forcefully was, "It's not Justice's department to investigate. It's up to the political party and the campaign." In other words, the Republicans and the Trump campaign had to do that, right? And I said, well, okay, if that's your view. But then a week later, he comes on national television and says, well, I've looked at this and there's no fraud there. It's like, Bill, you lied to me, you lied to the American public. You can't have it both ways. Now comes the news about Hunter Biden's laptop. I mean, that guy sat on that information, as you pointed out, for over a year. And of course, this investigation of the Russia hoax. I mean, look, I think the damages are in the trillions because we wound up with Joe Biden instead of Donald Trump, in part because of the burden of that Russia hoax on the administration for 4 long years. So Barr let us down, Bull Durham let us down. Good for the boss for the lawsuit. But I can tell you, folks watching this now, very painful. The traitors Mnuchin, Kudlow, Barr, Tillerson, Jeffrey Rosen, and of course all the people Boris named in that complaint, which I thought it should have been.
Peter, hang on for a second because I got to go back to Boris for a second. Boris, this is the question. You had Barr, right, was the Secretary General, as feckless as my good buddy Jeff Sessions turned out to be. You had Barr. Is the president having to be his own Attorney General now? Is that the purpose of the suit? Because he wants justice. He wants all the information to come out so you can see, as Navarro said, it's trillions of dollars for the American people, given what these guys did. Is Barr responsible for dropping the ball here, sir?
1,000% yes. 1,000% yes. Bill Barr was under absolute duty to investigate this. It was not his right. It was his duty as Attorney General to investigate this. He was obligated to do it, but he didn't do it. And he didn't do the right thing. Yes, he allowed Durham to start and conduct an investigation. That's ongoing, and some very vital information is coming out. That is a big part of the underpinning of this lawsuit. But this is absolutely President Donald Trump coming out and saying, I am going to get to the truth for not just for himself, but for the American people, for the MAGA movement, for the War Room Posse, for all Americans who know that the 2020 election was stolen and that there was unbelievable criminality conducted in an attempt to steal the 2016 election from President Trump. And here's the other part. And think of it this way. It's very simple. And this may or may not come directly from the president. Imagine if the tables were turned. Imagine if President Trump somehow spied on the Clinton campaign or the Biden campaign or the Obama campaign. Could you imagine the prosecution? It would have made the Russia hoax seem like child's play, like they're playing around with a playground. But because this was Donald Trump, because it's MAGA, they didn't do the right thing, and now he's doing it.
Okay, I want to pivot one time, but I want to make sure we'll talk about this later, maybe another time. But don't forget Lindsey Graham in the Senate. They promised. Remember, he was on Hannity every night. He told hearings are coming. I mean, it's Barr. Yes, absolutely. But it's Lindsey Graham promised every night on Hannity. He promised every night. I know he's talking to the president. He promised he went on TV. He was going to get to the bottom of it. There are going to be hearings. Not one hearing. Not one.
Nothing.
Not one hearing.
Nothing.
And I mean, forget public hearings. I mean, they didn't even do any private, as you know, call people in for depositions, Boris. Okay, Peter, I know you got to bounce, but I got to ask you about Katie Arrington. It's the president's endorsed pick down in Carolina. She sent I think it was a tweet out that called Mick Mulvaney a piece of crap, pretty blunt. This is a hard fight down there. I know you said, hey, you sent me right away. Good for Katie Arrington. Give me 2 minutes on your thoughts on Katie Arrington's tweet, Dr. Peter Navarro.
I worked with Katie Arrington during the pandemic at the worst time. She was a warrior. She was very helpful to me getting the Pentagon and HHS to get enough mask, gloves, goggles, and all of the PPE we needed to the American people. I can't speak more highly of her as an individual who served the Trump administration and who's pure MAGA and pure Trump. I also served with Mick Mulvaney, and he is very much the POS that Katie Arrington describes him as. I want to say right now to the people of South Carolina, don't let that little prick, and I say that just right on the air here, he's a little prick, don't let him convince you that in any way he was part of the Trump administration, even though he was in the White House. He was in the White House serving, but he was not serving the Trump agenda. He almost got the president impeached with his flipped arrogance at a press conference. It was good to see him gone. The president did a kindness to that SOB by letting him be an ambassador in Northern Ireland. And how did Mulvaney repay the president? Basically, he resigned over January 6th and accused the president of instigating violence. Mick Mulvaney is a POS, friends. Do not listen to him. And if he's pushing Nancy Mace, that's all you need to know. Nancy Mace is not worthy of the people of South Carolina who believe in the Trump agenda. Go Katie Arrington. She's the kind of blunt-speaking person who we need in the House of Representatives. And Mick Mulvaney, just get out of our life, boy. You are nothing but a clown.
I don't think people know enough of the darkest days. That's pretty clear. In the darkest days of the darkest days of the first couple of months of the pandemic, Katie Arrington was there for the president. She's there for the country. These guys did yeoman work. Peter, how do they get to the book? How do they follow you on social media, sir?
In Trump Time on Amazon. Get it because it's got all these stories that we're talking about now. Bill Barr, Mulvaney, all of this. Getter is the Twitter killer. We really need to get into using that platform. Twitter and Facebook censor you. Getter will not. Steve, I love this new hour you're doing. It really allows some granularity. So, Admiral, you keep steering the ship, brother.
Thank you very much, Peter. I want to go back. Thank you, Dr. Navarro. And the second, the political hour really loves you. Boris, I've got to, let me make an observation and help me out here. I've seen a sharper focus coming in the candidates that President Trump is endorsing and President Trump about some of these endorsements right now. Katie Arrington's Katie Arrington is off the chain about Mick Mulvaney and other parts of the South Carolina establishment that are really don't have President Trump's back. She's off the chain and in people's grill. I've noticed this a little bit. Is there been a little sharpened focus down at Mar-a-Lago, you think?
I can tell you that the focus of Mar-a-Lago is cutting glass sharp, okay? Is cutting glass sharp. The focus of Mar-a-Lago is total and complete, and it's driving toward a huge victory in 22 and a very, very, very overwhelming, historic, massive victory in 2024. And that includes actions taken by the president in the last couple of days. I know there's been some discussion on it, but, the action in Alabama with Mo Brooks, and the president going out and looking at what's going on here in South Carolina. He's heading to Georgia over the weekend, and he's heading to Michigan. President Trump continues to be, and I said this, it's going to come out on the record in one of the major outlets, he continues to be the undisputed leader of the Republican movement, of the MAGA movement. And the MAGA movement has now taken over the Republican Party solely because of President Trump and his people. the War Room Posse, Humbly Us, those of us who are not content to just say, you know what, let's go back to the establishment, but who believe that the War Room Posse, the MAGA movement, with President Trump leading, are what this party needs, and more importantly, what this country needs going forward. And that's why you see the fight in the candidates. And by the way, you see some polling come out of Georgia. There's a long time left between now and May 24th. President Trump is going to be very, very, very involved in that race of David Perdue versus Brian Kemp. And Brian Kemp cannot be allowed to remain as governor.
There's a lot of work to do, but there's obviously focus of this lawsuit, and we'll get into more of that tomorrow. The 108 pages, I want everybody to get up in the chat rooms, read it tonight. It's a page turner. This is Trump's best on offense, right? Want to go now. I got Doug Truex at Restoration. I'm going to get to him in 1 second. I want to get Mike Davis, though. Mike, give us an update today. You've been the guy that really went out there, did the research, and really put this nomination of Judge Jackson in play. Can you give us an update today? I know Twitter's been on fire on this. There's been new revelations. You're making, I think, assertions that the White House is leaking information to try to get ahead of her disastrous performance in front of the Judiciary Committee. Can you get us up to date, Mike Davis, from Article 3?
Yeah, very quickly. We saw the punch bowl piece this morning that we talked about, where we have Democrat senators on the highly partisan Judiciary Committee who are expressing concern about Judge Jackson's performance and her lack of preparedness in responding to Josh Hawley's questions about the 7 specific cases. In all 7 cases, Judge Jackson imposed lenient sentences for people who possess and distribute child pornography. He tweeted about it several days before her testimony. He told her in his opening on Monday that he was going to ask her about those 7 cases, and she came in and fell on her face on Tuesday. So now there is real concern among Democrats. And again, these aren't like fake moderate Democrats like Manchin and Sinema. These are partisan liberal Democrats on the Judiciary Committee who are expressing their concern to punch bowl. The more the Article 3 project digs into Judge Jackson's record on the district court, her sentencing on the district court, the worse it gets. One of the guys was Hawkins. He was the guy, and right when Judge Jackson got on the bench in 2013, she had Hawkins, who had multiple. He had a lot of child porn. He faced up to 10 years in prison. She gave him just 3 months, well below the recommended sentence from the sentencing guidelines of the prosecutor. We found out that in 2019 that he reoffended while he was out of prison when he should have been in prison if Judge Jackson would have followed the sentencing guidelines. And the Washington Post today got a leak from the probation office, potentially an illegal leak from the probation office that confirms that it was a sexual related child sex related incident for this Hawkins. And so the guy should have been in prison. He gets out. Another thing we found out is that when he got out with this 3-month sentence, Judge Jackson did not have any computer restrictions imposed on him, which is just crazy. So if he would have had computer restrictions imposed on him when he was on supervised release, when he was out after 3 months, they could have nabbed him for this incident. So it's just it keeps getting worse and worse for Judge Jackson.
But hang on. But this goes to the heart of it, of why they were. Was this information about Hawkins, being a recidivist, and particularly doing it on the computer, which she specifically, is this why they went through this whole dog and pony show of not releasing the information? Now, so this is why they didn't give the panel, because they knew how explosive this would be?
There are 3 categories of documents that are at stake here. The one is the White House records. There are 48,000 pages of her Obama White House records from her prior nominations to the Sentencing Commission and to the District Court. So there's that set of records. And then there is another set of records from her internal deliberations from the Sentencing Commission. And that would include why she thought it was a good idea for the Sentencing Commission to adopt a finding contrary to expert testimony that child pornographers are somehow not pedophiles and somehow they're not dangerous to the community, so therefore judges should impose lighter sentences than the 5-year mandatory minimum imposed by Congress. That's the second set. The third set are these probation office pre-sentence reports that are selectively leaking out. By law, they're confidential. The Biden White House got a copy of these from Judge Jackson's chambers. She gave them to the Biden White House. The Biden White House is leaking these to the Washington Post and other outlets, leaking them to Senate Democrats, and they're refusing to disclose them to the Senate Republicans.
But hang on. But here's the punchline is, if it hadn't been for you getting this and putting this out there, so with Hawley and doing the research, people would talk, they would have never released this stuff. This is a damning. This shows you why they held these records back and they didn't want to talk about it. Hawkins appears to, if what you tell me, the Washington Post reporting, Hawkins committed a crime along the lines of this and did it on the computer, which is specifically kind of what he was supposed to spend, 60 months? She gave him 3. I mean, this gets to the heart of what the problem is. Are these the facts that are coming out right now, Mike Davis?
Yes. Her theory that was contradicted by expert testimony on the Sentencing Commission that child pornographers are somehow not pedophiles and therefore they're not dangerous and therefore we don't need to put them in jail for a long time. This theory comes crashing down on her with this Hawkins sentence, right? Because that was one of the first sentences Mike, it's not even her theory. She sat there and dug in on it during the testimony. If she knew this, why didn't she come forward at the time, knowing that this would eventually come out? This makes her looks like she was not straightforward and truthful to the American people, if those facts are like you say they are. Don't you agree with that? This is a cover-up. This is clearly a cover-up. They're trying to jam through her nomination. Justice Breyer is not even stepping down from the bench until the end of June. They're trying to jam through her nomination now before Senate Republicans and the American people can fully review her record. They don't want people to know her record because it's not a good record.
Mike, hang on for 1 second. I want to bring Boris back in here. Boris, you were the head of surrogates for Gorsuch. You know the level of preparation that goes into these things. People should understand Supreme Court nominations, confirmation are so rare. Mike Davis ran it for Grassley. In fact, he ran the Gorsuch in Kavanaugh. Or at least the Kavanaugh. I think you did the Gorsuch also. But you know the work that has to go into it, Boris. Boris, how, if the facts are what Mike Davis lays out, this cuts to the heart of what the last couple of days been. How could this possibly have happened, sir? They withheld this information.
Well, there's 2 parts to it. One is they're hiding information, and that's clear. The other is you have one of the worst, most feckless, pathetic teams ever to operate out of a White House. I mean, I can't think of a really, and Steve, we've talked a lot about history, study history. Can you really think back and think of a worse staff? This is the worst president. We'll talk about his approval, disapproval is now 34 to 57, and he's a disaster. Okay, we'll talk about that in the next half hour. And so we know that Buchanan is now happy that Joe Biden is unquestionably the worst president in the history of America. He's illegitimate and the worst. Okay, to go with that, he has the worst staff ever. I mean, look at these people. Jake Sullivan, by the way, named defendant in President Trump's powerhouse lawsuit. Jake Sullivan, National Security. Jen Psaki, the worst communicator, I think, of all time. And it's her team that is running the communications around Judge Jackson's confirmation. And then you've got the White House counsel's office completely unseen, hiding all the time. And there's supposed to be a strong team that the White House puts together around the nominee. The nominee doesn't come in with a ton of staff who run the process. It is the White House. They appoint a Sherpa. In this case, it's the sad Doug Jones from Alabama.
Let me go back to Mike. Let me go back to Mike. He's got to bounce for. He's got to bounce before we get to the break. Mike, this is an explosive revelation today. What do you think happened? How does this thing play out? They're supposed to vote on the 4th at a committee and then on the floor on the 8th. Is the revelation today? Are they getting ahead of it? We got about 2 minutes. Are they getting ahead of it? Or are they going to have to hit the delay button here?
They leaked this to the Washington Post, and the Washington Post reported this information in the 22nd paragraph today. This should have been a screaming headline that Judge Jackson's policy of going light on child pornographers led to Hawkins reoffending after she gave him a light sentence. And I think people need to call the Senate switchboard and tell their home state senators to not vote for this nominee until her records are released.
Okay, by the way, that number is what? 202.
I apologize, Steve. 202-224-3121. Yep.
We melted down. We know today we melted down Dick Durbin's. Everybody in the audience has got to light it up today, color within the lines, but they have to hear this is unacceptable. I think the judge obfuscated or maybe even lied. If she knew what Hawkins had done after that sentence, she should have come forward in the hearings. And I think they ought to recall and bring her back. I think we ought to have another set of hearings to do this. Mike Davis, real quickly, how do people follow you, your Twitter account, and get her like the AP Associated Press on this story? Everybody's got to follow it. How do they get to you?
MRDDMIA. MRDDMIA. And we're also at article3project.org, article number 3project.org.
Okay, it's amazing. Okay, short commercial break. We're going to return again. Boris is going to be with you for the whole hour. We've got Doug Truax. He runs the Restoration PAC. They are down already heavy into Georgia to tell people the truth about what's going on at the pump, to tell people the truth about what's going on with inflation and not let this spin take place about it's all Putin's fault. Doug Truax next. We're also going to talk about the situation in Missouri, about the redistricting. Boris Epshteyn's got a lot of polling and analysis, all in the next half hour. In War Room Battleground, we'll be back in just a moment. A close run thing, as we say. Very well run. Boris, what are they doing in the White House right now, given the information? And it's got to be more information now. Now you know why they're holding this information back and they have not released it. Everything we've said about we need to see the information, this reinforces people to say, look, you weren't straightforward. You didn't come forward. Your thoughts?
There's no doubt about it, as Tom Cotton pressed Judge Jackson on, that she's not being forthcoming. They're asking about a case that is the absolute focus of these hearings and about something that happened 2-3 years ago. And she's saying, I don't remember. Let's go back to the issue really at hand here. First of all, Key Bedingfield, the White House Comms Director, Jen Psaki, the press secretary, they're panicking. We know that, okay? But I will tell you, Stephen, I bet you agree, that right now, with Joe Biden out of the country, completely embarrassing himself on the world stage, Ron Klain, the chief of staff, has got to be thinking about pulling this nomination. Why? Because it is clear that not only was there a wrongful action by Judge Jackson in the Hawkins case, there's now been a cover-up, and she's covering it up. So there's and I'm not saying she committed a crime, but in parlance, there's a crime and a cover-up, and that is not a good combination. And look at McConnell. There's a reason McConnell's coming out today saying, hey, no way, no how. And we talked about this, always signal, not noise for this audience. We talked about days ago that, hey, sure, Mitt Romney's singing a song a couple days ago in Collins, but not anymore. You don't hear him anymore because this has become the central issue, and it's become the central issue thanks to the War Room Posse. The War Room Posse has put this wrongdoing first and foremost, and Judge Jackson can't spin her way out of it. Yep. And this is the worst equipped White House ever to spin anything. And to take 10 more seconds to go back to the Gorsuch nomination. We ran that thing like a well-oiled machine, but we also had an honest nominee. Yep. She's not being an honest nominee. That's a problem.
Yep. Well, even with an honest nominee and turning over all the documents, it's brutal. I mean, the work that you guys did, and people don't understand. Brutal. I mean, with Boris and the team, I mean, it is 24 hours a day, and then also Kavanaugh, where they pull the stuff for drinking a beer in high school and all that nonsense. I want to go to. By the way, so here's why I'm so proud of this audience. When Mike Davis approached me, and some people put Mike Davis in touch with us, this thing was on Glide Slope Indicator, and I kind of looked through some of the research and I said, hey, this child pornography thing looks pretty bad. I mean, this got to be fully vetted. And Mike Davis, Article 3, and I told the audience this morning, where are all the social conservative people who have been taking money for years that have not been on top of this? It shouldn't be left just to Mike Davis and Terry Schilling and Liz Ure and some others, a handful of others. This has got to be all hands on deck. This is a lifetime appointment. Judge Jackson will be making decisions 30 years from now. You got to be on top of it. Boris, I want to go to people. We always like to profile people who are getting things done. The Restoration PAC is on fire. They're down in Georgia. And it's very important. They're reminding people of what the truth is by putting their money where their mouth is about inflation, about what's happened to our economy, and not having spin. Doug Truax, a West Point graduate of Ranger School, field artillery officer in the Army, now runs that PAC. Doug, tell us, why did you select Georgia, and tell us about what your spots are about and why you're putting money into getting the truth out there about inflation and about what the illegitimate Biden regime is doing to the American economy and to working class and middle class people everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on, Steve. So you can watch them do this now, Psaki and all these people. Hey, the gas prices are up because of the war and the Russians and everything. Well, our polling tells us people aren't buying that. And so we're going down to Georgia with our ad. It's basically, a woman fills up at the tank and she says, $80 to fill up. And then we got the sticker on the gas pump and it has Biden saying, I did that. And then, Raphael Warnock did that too. Those two guys work together. And so now we're in a place where ordinary Americans, once a week, they're going and filling up and they're saying, what the heck is going on? In addition to the inflation. But this gas thing is so important because it's a real manifestation of where their policies are taking us. I mean, it's an ideological piece. So people, we used to think, these politicians, they made some bad choices and now we've got to live with it. The reality is, and we all know this on our side, is that this is what these guys want. They want high gas prices. They want you to go buy a Tesla. I mean, it's crazy. They're just thinking, they're just like, hey, let's push it this way. And they're not going to complain about it because that's what they want you to suffer through. So you'll go their direction. And so we're calling that out and we're saying, look, you have to live through this. Everyday Americans. I mean, people, middle wage, low wage, whatever. It is a lot of money in addition to the inflation piece. But if they're going to push things this direction, we have got to expose it. So, we're in Georgia first. There might be more to come, but a lot of these senators, we got to get the Senate back, and these senators are in lockstep with Biden doing this.
Listen, this is what for our audience, and we don't have unlimited time, but I want to say what a PAC is and what are you guys doing and why are you going to Georgia? We're going to have you on every time you put out a spot because we understand you've got your MAGA, your America First, you got President Trump's back. But tell our audience, just so they understand the nomenclature, what is a PAC and what do you guys do?
Right. So what we did, I ran for Senate in 2015. Had a bunch of guys. We figured out, hey, we got to make this thing keep moving. So we formed a 527 federal super PAC, Restoration PAC. And it's kind of a new space still, but this is where we can take unlimited funds from donors and work in campaigns. We can't coordinate with the candidates and the campaigns, but we can go into states, into different races, and that's what we've been doing. Lots of Senate races, presidential, obviously, lots of different places. But in this case in particular, some big races coming up. And for Senate races, you got New Hampshire, you got Nevada, you got Georgia, obviously. And, we just did some polling in Georgia. And like I said, people aren't buying it. So we're just going to remind them that people like Warnock are the reason that we're in this spot. I mean, it's obviously Biden too, but Warnock's backing them up and we got to get these guys out. And that's what we do at a super PAC. And so Restoration Group is our, kind of a moniker for the entire organization because we have a 501c4 Restoration Action and a 501c3, the Foundation for the Restoration of America. And together we all work, we're all working together to do great things for the country going forward in any way that we can. And you can check that out real quick commercial. Restorationofamerica.com is where you can check that out.
That's what I want to know. What's your social media and how do people get to this to find out more and make their own decision? How they track you guys down?
Yeah, restorationofamerica.com is where you can go to sign up and get all the stuff that we do. I mean, we've got hundreds of thousands of Facebook, right, Twitter, we're everywhere. All our videos are on Rumble and YouTube as well. But until they start taking them down, but Rumble, every place else that you normally would see all the stuff, just go to Restoration PAC is the easiest way to get there, and that's how you can support us in any way you can. And yeah, we're definitely on the front edge of this thing. And also I'd love to come back on and talk to you about what we're doing for voter integrity and the transparency that we're bringing to the country at voteref.com too.
We're going to have you back very quickly about that. Doug Traux, keep fighting. Great.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Fantastic. This is what we need. Boris, you're a political strategist. Tell the audience these PACs, where do they play in? And particularly, they're making these great spots to remind people, hey, don't believe the spin. This is not about Putin. Of course, that's throwing gasoline on a dumpster fire, a prairie fire, but it's really about the policies of Biden and these woke progressives that work in his administration. How important are PACs in the current political environment, Boris Epshteyn?
They're important, Steve. PACs are political action committees. And here's what I'll say. I believe that the American campaign finance law is a total joke. It's a total disaster, right? There's all these rules on campaigns, but then the PACs don't have rules, so that could be unlimited. It could be unlimited donations. I believe that all political donations should be unlimited. I think McCain-Feingold is a joke, another present to us from Senator McCain, and I think we should get rid of it, and then you wouldn't have this complicated issue of, okay, you've got a PAC here, you've got a campaign here. But the way it is right now, the life we live, and the realities are that PACs are the entities that come over the top, and a lot of PACs don't have to disclose who their donors are. Some PACs do, and then these PACs spend unlimited political capital, unlimited political money for specific causes. It may be to back a candidate, it may be to back a specific cause, it may be to oppose a cause. But that's what that's what these PACs are, and they are very important in American politics, and everybody should keep them in mind. And by the way, the Democrats have been prolific users of them for a very, 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 very long time, and that's very important for Republicans to have groups like Restoration PAC and others to be able to counteract the evil action of the woke left, the radical left, and the Democrats. So they are very, very important.
Real quickly, just when people hear them all the time, where they can't coordinate with the candidate or the campaign. What do people mean by that?
What that means is that perfect example is there in Georgia, right? You got the Herschel Walker campaign, and the Herschel Walker campaign is running for the Senate. That's a campaign filed with the Federal Election Commission, and then you've got PACs supporting that campaign. Well, the operatives running the campaign and the operatives running the PACs are not allowed to coordinate. They're not allowed to discuss non-public information, not allowed to discuss communications, meaning, communication strategy, not allowed to discuss spending. They're not allowed to direct fundraising. There's supposed to be a wall between the two. Only issues that could potentially be discussed by members of a campaign and a PAC are those that are fully and blatantly public. That's all. So that's what people say when they say there could not be any coordination. And again, to me, this complexity is what keeps a lot of regular Americans, grassroots Americans, out of politics, because the laws are so arcane, so complicated, and they make it difficult for people to just say, well, I want to raise money. Can I just go and raise as much as I want for my family and friends? No, because the usual limits, which are really small, $2,800 per election per person, right? $5,600 per couple. Those limits apply to all campaigns. So I believe that, as we are going forward as a movement, the MAGA movement, the War Room Posse, we should absolutely be pushing for wholesale campaign finance overhaul. And to me, I just get rid of all the laws. As long as the only thing we need to make sure is that there's total transparency. President Trump's talked about that. Because I do not believe that under the Constitution, under Citizens United, anybody can tell anyone else how much they could contribute to a candidate. If someone decides to run for the Senate, if we're backing a candidate, why am I not allowed to give every dollar I have to that candidate? I believe I should be allowed to do so. So I think it's very important for us to start actively thinking about and action driving toward campaign finance overhaul. But in the meantime, to support these PACs, support these groups that are supporting the candidates and the causes that we believe in. Action.
In taking back the House with a 100-seat majority that we can basically run the country for 100 years, it starts in redistricting. You've been focused on this now for months and months and months. One of the hottest places we're talking about is Missouri. Let's bring in Aaron Gobranson from Star News Network. And by the way, the Traux story is up on Star also about what the PAC is doing in Georgia. It's a very big deal down there, getting on top of the situation on inflation. Yeah, hey, that's what President Trump was saying, right out of Central Casting. Army to spur it away. Aaron, tell us about, tell Boris and I and the audience about what happened in Missouri today, because, folks, we got another dogfight in our hands. Tell us what the Rhinos did in Missouri today, sir.
So the Rhinos in Missouri blew another chance at giving the Republican Party an advantage. They are keeping the status quo by passing a feckless, thoughtless, Rhino-driven redistricting plan that keeps the partisan makeup exactly the same. The conservatives have been pushing for a 7-to-1 Republican plan, which has been rejected. And currently there's 6 Republicans and 2 Democrats in the House. And the state House had passed a plan keeping the status quo in January, and today, by a 22-10 margin, the state Senate passed a different plan that accomplishes the same thing, keeping it 6-2. Meanwhile, on the table, there was a 7-1 plan that was tossed aside by the rhinos.
Okay, Aaron, hang on a second. I want to bring Boris back in here. Boris, look, Mark Elias is named in the president's lawsuit. This has been a guy I've been very focused on. But you got to help the audience understand this. The Democrats in the state of California, you combine California and New York together. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Boris. I think it's total of 8 seats, 3 in New York and I think 5 in California. Those two massive states put together, right, have a total of 8 total Republican seats because Democrats in those states across the country play smash mouth in Illinois, in New York, Maryland, in California, in Maryland, wherever they're in charge. You got to help the audience out here. We've been on this fight in Missouri, and because of what DeSantis is doing in Florida and what Tennessee's doing, and quite frankly, the War Room Posse getting on top of this. And I know it's a topic. Guys call me every night. Your redistricting thing's amazing. How can possibly Boris Epshteyn please explain to me how the Senate can come back at 22-10? It wasn't that it was a close vote for a 6-2 a map when it's got to be and ought to be 7-1, sir.
It should be 7-1, and that 6-2 is closer to 5-3. And I fully hope that the House in Missouri does the right thing and votes this map down. And if not, Governor Parson doesn't sign it and vetoes it, as it happened in Tennessee and other places. We cannot have a map that is anything but 7-1. As we just heard, everything other than that is another loss, is giving up. Look at Kansas. There, a Democrat governor vetoes a map. Boom! MAGA patriots come and override the veto. Okay? In Tennessee, MAGA patriots, the governor was getting a little wobbly. MAGA patriots coming in and doing the right thing. Here we need for a Republican House and a Republican governor to act like MAGA, to be strong. Look at this lawsuit President Trump launched today. That's a powerhouse. All over Twitter, people are on fire. Everybody, even those who disagree with President Trump sometimes, everybody's on fire. We need that same fire in Missouri, and we need it in Florida, where Governor DeSantis already said he would veto anything but a 20-8 map. Because if we take another seat off the table and go from 7-1 to 6-2, or 2 seats, 5-3, well, then, we're taking another step away from 100 seats, 100 years. And why would we do that? Why would we give up? There's no reason. The uniparty, the khaki-wearing, country club-going Republicans have got to stop giving up, because you're giving up the country. You're allowing for middle-class Americans to be robbed at the pump, for there not to be a border at the southern border, for us to have the disaster in Afghanistan and now in Ukraine. That's what you're doing. People go, well, redistricting, it's so complicated. It's not. It's literally, do you take a House seat or 2 or 3 or 5 and make a MAGA, or do you give them to the woke libs? And why would we ever want to give a seat to the woke libs? It makes no sense whatsoever. So right now, you've got to get on the horn, you've got to email, you've got to call, you've got to text, and hey, if you show up at Jefferson City, color within the lines, but do so boldly, and let the House of Missouri, and Governor Parson know that you will not accept a 6-2 map. The time for action is now.
Okay, we're going to get up and get her right now, the number to call in Missouri. Aaron, Star News has been doing a great job on this. Great job on the Truex story about in Georgia. So, Aaron, tell us how they get to you on social media and how they get to the Star News Network.
So you can go to thestarnewsnetwork.com or the TennesseeStar.com, and you can find me on Getter as Aaron Goldbertson on Getter.
Aaron, great job. Tell Leahy, great job. Boris, I only got 2 minutes. I swear, Boris, before the week's out, we're going to go through all your polling. You got analysis we got to get to, but we got a minute left before I get to your social media. I want to go back to this lawsuit because this is the news of the day for the Trump movement. President Trump's firing off the football. This is totally going on offense. Just give us your summary. It's 108 pages. We've got it up on Getter. We got it in all the chat rooms. We need everybody to read it tonight because this is Donald J. Trump throwing down hard on Hillary Clinton and that whole nest of vipers around her. Boris Epshteyn.
President Trump has now done what Bill Barr, the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, failed to do, which is hold Hillary Clinton, the DNC, James Comey, Perkins Coie, Mark Elias, Michael Sussman, others, to account for the crimes they committed in spying on the 2016 campaign, in spying on President Trump's White House. He is saying that we are not going to take it anymore. And that is why you've got such a reaction on social media. And frankly, write-ups on Reuters, Politico, and others that are taking this very seriously. They'd love to dismiss it, but they can't. And look at the two stories. Literally on the week where the fact that the New York DA investigation into Trump work has fallen apart, and literally fallen apart with fireworks, right? With the prosecutors saying, well, there was something, and the DA saying, sorry, buddy, that you're a Clinton donor, but there's nothing. You've got that, and you contrast it with President Trump continuing to bring full-on fire against crooked Hillary, the DNC, and the woke radical libs.
10 seconds. Give me your social media so people can get to your newsletter.
Hot website, BorisCP.com. Hot on Getter at BorisCP. Twitter at BorisCP. Truth Social at Boris. Hottest on the gram, Boris_Epshteyn. Stay strong. God bless. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning is going to be explosive. Join us back here at the War Room, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. See you then.